So hello everyone to the last session before the lunch break. I'm quite happy to introduce that we have a panel of long-term CloudStack committers and project members. And in this panel, we have the CloudStack question time. So we will take about 30 to 45 minutes to have a discussion about the future of the project sustainability, maybe some technical discussions. We already have collected a few questions in advance from the people who are registered in the event. We sent a survey, so we will start with these questions. But if somebody wants to join and have a specific question to our panelists, I will be more than happy to give you the microphone. So let's start first with the introduction of the panel. Vido, would you like to go first?
I got the microphone, right? So, Vido Den Hollander, I've been working with the project for 12 years now, active in the web hosting industry since 2004. And yeah, I've been going to the CloudStack conferences since, I think, 10 years.
Stefan Binek from We Systems, working with CloudStack since quite a while at my current employee and the employee before, and yeah, really enjoying it.
So I'm Giles Cyrus, I'm CEO of Shape Blue. 12 years, I think, about the same time, Guido, and I'm a PMC member and committer in the project. I haven't written a line of code for most of those 12 years. I'm a recovering software engineer, not a current software engineer.
Yeah, Sven Brüsecke, founder and CEO of Pro.io, and yeah, we are using CloudStack for several years now.
Thank you guys. Before I start with the first question, just want to encourage everybody who is watching online, you can use the option for the Q&A on the Cubicle platform and you can submit your question there. So let's start with the questions which we already have. The first one is quite key question. So why CloudStack is evolving and thrived as an orchestration project when we have other orchestrations which are struggling on the market?
Possession is 9/10 of the law with this microphone, right? Why is CloudStack successful and other projects are struggling? I suppose in a way you need to define success and define what's struggling actually means. But I think one thing with CloudStack, it's been consistent. We've always had this sort of tightly defined scope. We didn't go off and try and change the world like Openstack did, for example. And we've stayed quiet. We just quietly carry on doing what we're doing and evolving the technology. I think there are a few changes in the market that are going on. I don't know whether we probably get questions about what's going on with VMware and Broadcom at the moment. That's having an impact. Some of the concepts around people wanting to repatriate out of public cloud means there's just generally more people looking to orchestrate their own infrastructure. But I think it's relative success with CloudStack. We're just consistently growing instead of having this huge spike that some other projects did and then sort of dying away like they are.
Well, I think that consistency is the word you mean, is also that it has been a stable project for over the last 10 years. So in the first few years, what Rohit already mentioned, and with the graph, you had a lot of committers. Now it's in a stable phase, it's reliable. Something you learned 3 years ago with CloudStack is still applicable. And that sometimes sounds like it's an old project, but no, it's still a reliable project, not only from a technology perspective, from a human perspective as well, that the knowledge you have now is still applicable in a couple of years. So it is something to build your company on.
As I mentioned before, ease of use and ease of operation. I think that's really a differentiator when you look around the universe of orchestrators and the possibility to use whichever or a lot of different hypervisors. Talking to so many different people using CloudStack, using different hypervisors. So it's not about the hypervisor; it's about then the orchestration layer.
So, Stefan, you mentioned something about ease of use and ease of operation. I'm just curious if the other people in the panel can share their experience. Do you actually agree that it's easy to use?
100%, yes. It's easy to use. You can do fast POCs with a small team. You get results fast, positive success results. And it's a great community behind it. You can ask your questions in the user mailing list. You don't get trolled like in so many other mailing lists. And yeah, that's maybe the reason why we're using CloudStack.
I would argue a bit differently, that looking at CloudStack now and looking at it, I helped a company from Mexico, actually, this is a short story. I helped them in my spare time because they were building up a cloud environment. Like, I like these guys, I'll help them setting up CloudStack. And I was watching them setting it up, and they drowned in all the options, in domains, accounts, users, APIs, rules. So it was a very, I wouldn't say difficult because I can't speak for them, but looking from my perspective, it was difficult for them to understand the project at first. So they know what virtualization does, but then suddenly running a cloud environment and having all these things coming towards you, just the amount of global settings you can set. We made a great change in the UI, making it categorized. However, so many settings, they were a bit overwhelmed about what was coming their way. And then CloudStack was just one portion. Then it was network, there was storage, all the stuff. It was quite difficult for them to understand. So ease of use, yes. If you've been working with it for a couple of years, you know all its oddities with the HA, with NFS, you know all that stuff, and all the settings, you know which you need to change. However, from easy of adoption, I think it's not that easy always.
That's right too. You have a learning curve, and you totally forget about this learning curve when you're working several years with the product. But from our experience, this learning curve is not as big as in other orchestration softwares. And this is what I meant before when it's easy to use. It's still a powerful orchestration software, and powerful comes with many options.
Yeah, and I think the key point is it's relative, right? Compared to other orchestration platforms, CloudStack has always been relatively easy to POC, to get in production. But I think that's maybe something as a community we need to sort of constantly remind ourselves, like Guido says, it's still a very complicated piece of software. You look at, at the front end, it's a simple API, and that's the beauty of CloudStack. But at the back, we know there's a lot going on, right? So it's maybe just something we need to sort of take a check of ourselves sometimes and remind ourselves it's a very complex domain it's in.
And on this topic, if you can redesign the project and the software in a way in which you can solve these issues, what would you change? So imagine a hypothetical situation in which you start the whole project afresh. Is there anything which you can change?
I think from a networking perspective, the network has evolved over time where we have overlay networks and such, and we're still very much in the layer 2 networking, VLAN tagging and CloudStack. The amount of options you get for networking when deploying CloudStack, and I think from the design perspective where these multiple different networks, that can probably be simplified. It was built in an age when 1 gig network was the default and 10 gig was the expensive one, so you had separate networks. Now 100 gig is cheap, so why would you need different physical networks? We can have a different debate about that. Let's not do that right now. However, I think that the design philosophy around network can be changed a bit in CloudStack to make it easier.
Yeah, I think a lot of the design decisions which were made back in 2009, 2010, something like that, were fundamentally great decisions. The way the entire networking model sits together is, look, we're still using it now. I think there was a rush with CloudStack. It was a hype thing at the time. So some of the fundamental pieces of software engineering in terms of logging, in terms of thinking about long-term maintainability weren't made at the beginning. And there's been a lot of work in the decade since then to sort of address those problems. So I think if I was designing from scratch now, I'd just take a little bit longer and just think this thing's going to be around in 12 years still. How are they going to be maintaining it then?
Anybody wants to add something? Okay, so starting again on that topic, what, according to everybody from you, is the #1 feature which CloudStack is missing?
Well, coming from where we operate Proxmox as well, the backup feature from Proxmox, being a KVM-based hypervisor, really appealing, and that's what I'm still missing in CloudStack so far. I know there are a lot of things around different storages being used, but the ease of use of creating backups, creating incremental backups with Proxmox is way easier than it is for us currently in CloudStack.
The same for us. And another thing is, I forgot.
No, but I do agree with that. But I think the decision there is that CloudStack is hypervisor agnostic, so that makes it more difficult to implement these features. If you would say we're going KVM only, then you can develop all kinds of features just for KVM. But we see that CloudStack works with VMware, with XCP-ng, and with KVM. That's also a benefit, but the downside is that it's more difficult to get such features in there. So I do like Proxmox, but it's a completely different project than CloudStack is. I run Proxmox myself as well for some small stuff. So.
I remember. Host high availability. I think it's a feature, but it's already been addressed. There's a talk today or tomorrow, I'm not sure about that, which will address that. Right now, host high availability needs NFS storage, and I think this is a thing we need to change.
I think if you stand back from that question a little bit, there's always going to be a list of things that, for different use cases, you haven't got, because of the nature of the fact that, you know, CloudStack is an abstraction layer to lots of different hypervisors, lots of different storage platforms. So that's almost an endless list, right? It's constantly moving. Personally, I mean, this might sound like a bit of a get out, but the fact that people had to use different APIs for object storage, especially when they're a service provider, was always really annoyed me, in that most of that storage is going into CloudStack anyway. But anyway, it seems that that's been fixed with the latest release. But yeah, that would be a thing I would have liked to have seen, which is now here.
Okay, so we already discussed the features which are missing and which definitely needs to be added. But if we focus on the existing features and the use cases in which CloudStack is applicable, the major use case, I think, is service providers which are using the technology. So we have Sven, we have Stefan, we have Vido. Three of you work for service providers. Do you think that this is the major use case and the project should push in this direction? Or there are other use cases which the project may fit well and the community should focus on?
I see another use case in bringing an orchestration layer or API layer on top of any virtualization you're using in a company right now. So to be more flexible in the future with VMware changes, which will maybe come in the future, to be more flexible and to have this layer extra to talk to this layer, and your application doesn't need to change the API calls when everything under it changes.
Yeah, so going towards the future, I think that CloudStack might use a bit more accounting and getting more statistics out of it. And then I'm not talking about IOPS or network statistics, but how many VMs do I have which are running Ubuntu? Or how many VMs do I have which are running Ubuntu and are running on a hypervisor which is on an AMD CPU? Those kinds of questions, so you get more insights from your environment than just volume statistics and network statistics, because those are done. We get those statistics, but more granular information from how you're using your cloud, especially if you're running a couple of thousand virtual machines, you want to answer those questions pretty quickly. And then maybe do a export quickly of those VMs or the data.
I agree. That's what could be improved as well to serve service providers or help service providers. But I think in general, a pure focus on service providers, I think that's not where I have the feeling that's not where CloudStack initially came from, and I have a feeling CloudStack. Looking at Rohit's project to have CloudStack running on a Raspberry Pi, for example. It's possible, and it's great that it's possible, I would say.
Yeah, I think it did come initially. Well, certainly the initial rush around IaaS, 10 years ago was definitely, so everybody wanted to copy Amazon at the time. But I think in a way the question is a false question, because actually, there are lots of other organisations who are running CloudStack who are not service providers, but they behave like service providers within those large organisations. I mean, all sorts of, Rohit name-checked a few this morning, massive organisations who are effectively running what we would think of as private cloud, but they have the same challenges as you three guys here in terms of being service providers. They've still got to effectively cross-charge and bill into different departments. They still have the similar security, even though it's often within a corporate environment, they've still got similar security considerations. So they have to think of different consumers within their organisation as different tenants. So yeah, they're all service providers in my eyes. So I don't think we need to worry too much about whether the project goes in one direction or another.
Thank you, Giles. So obviously the question about features is a hot topic specifically for the people in our audience and for the community. We heard the talk earlier about the upcoming 4.19 release. So what's your opinion on this release and on the features included? Is there something which you like, something which you dislike, or is there something which is very major for the community and will bring some change?
As usually with major releases or with such a release, I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed by just looking at the features, reading through it, hearing this morning about them again. There's so many things which are helping us again. Simple things like moving subdomains between parent domains. It sounds simple, but that's helping a lot. And yeah, again, I was impressed again to see what kind of changes are going to be implemented in such a short amount of time, I would say.
That's correct, yeah. I was also impressed after seeing this presentation. What stood out for me was the migration from VMware to KVM. This is really interesting, looks really interesting, and it's fitting in our potential use cases or in the future. So we will take a look into that.
Yeah, the VMware to KVM, that opens possibilities. So that would be nice. But I'm always impressed in what you say about new features that developers come up with an idea like, I never think about this, but this is quite interesting that you came up with the idea. So kudos for the developers.
I've already said I love the object store API. But yeah, the import-export stuff, the migration stuff, and I think really we should be in as a project, you really should just be able to lay a CloudStack on somewhere, point it to a virtualized infrastructure and say, go and orchestrate that. And I think that we're seeing those sort of, all of those things coming, sort of going in that direction. And I think, you know, there's loads of exciting features, but what I really like is the number of people involved in the community. If you look at the number of names of different organizations who are contributing to these features, that's what's exciting me at the moment. We've got this, you know, very vibrant, predominantly user-driven community without any big vendors in it. And I think that's what helps make CloudStack really healthy going forward.
Yeah, and I want to add or thank the community and developers. We are just users of CloudStack. We are not. We have no developing capacity. We contribute with documentation updates or with issues open in GitHub. But it's really nice to see how good the community works. We opened several issues. Some of them are already fixed in or taken care of in 4.19, which gives us more value of CloudStack.
Thank you. I heard the word VMware 2 times, I think. Would you like to discuss a little bit on this topic? I think that everybody in this room is following closely the VMware acquisition by Broadcom. So what do you think will be changed on the market after the deal is finalized? And also, do you think that this will affect somehow the CloudStack project and our community?
Okay, I mean, CloudStack's relationship with VMware, it's a hypervisor, and we support it. It's important we do. There are still, you know, there's a lot of people talking KVM and XCP here, but I know around the world there are a lot of organizations who have got CloudStack layered on top of VMware. So potentially if things start to change technically there, there's no indication that's going to happen. That's something we need to think about. But I think, you know, the uncertainty that's gone on since this, the worst kept secret in the market, I think, and people's concerns, I think there's definitely people who are reevaluating virtualization. And this isn't really in the service provider space, it's in the rest of the world sort of thing that, you know, VMware has been the gold-plated virtualization, enterprise virtualization platform for decades now. and people are getting genuinely worried about what it's going to cost them going forward. And we've actually at Shape Blue, we've seen this. We've seen people who are looking at CloudStack, and their use case is effectively as an abstraction layer between VMware and their own internal automation tooling. Doesn't mean they're going to migrate today, or they've got any plans to, but they want to break the hard connection they've got because they are concerned. So yeah, I think it's definitely going to have impact, probably good impact, probably negative impact. Don't know, but I think we need to wait to see what happens over the next few months before we get a full picture of it.
I think it will take a bit more than a couple of months, but somebody needs to make a return on investment on the acquisition. So something is going to happen. Which way it's going, I don't know, but we had a few migrations from VMware to KVM because the companies we acquired, they were fairly small and they were running VMware because it was the ease of use. As they kept growing, their OPEX for just spending on VMware became too expensive. And then they migrated away from KVM towards KVM. And we're now looking at an acquisition, which we're potentially going to be doing somewhere in Europe, which is full VMware, but they say, after the acquisition, please, let's go to KVM immediately, because the owner wants to get rid of VMware, but he has no idea on how to do it, so he'd like our help to actually get it done.
Just one question on what you said. How easy it's actually to migrate from VMware to CloudStack and KVM, and what's the process? What can companies expect if they make this decision?
I would say it is easy and not easy. If you're just using VMware as a plain virtualization, it's taking the VMDK image out of VMware, putting it somewhere in, converting it, putting it in KVM, and it runs. If you're using specific features which only VMware can provide, then it becomes more difficult. So if you're running virtual desktops inside VMware, that works really well in there. If it's just plain Linux machines, it's pretty easy, but an automated feature where CloudStack can do it for you will probably convince a lot more people to do so.
Yeah, our experience is that no of our customers is unhappy with VMware from the functionality side. It's still one of maybe the best featured hypervisor on the market, but it's the most expensive hypervisor on the market. And the fear is more that Broadcom will push the prices up of licensing, and most of our customers have 3 to 5 years licensing already done. So after this time period, or wherever they are at the moment, they will start to search or to look for alternatives.
Anybody wants to add something? Okay, good. So I want to focus a little bit more about the open source part of the project. We are known as purely open source project. And unlike other orchestrations, for example, Openstack, where there are a lot of commercial distributions, we don't have something similar in our community. So do you think that this is healthy, and would actually CloudStack benefit if there is a commercial distribution?
I think it's super healthy, and CloudStack wouldn't benefit from it. That's my answer.
What will be the name of the company taking care of this?
No. We used to have a commercial distribution. We used to have Citrix, right?
Exactly.
You know, and actually say thank you to Citrix. They donated the code initially to the ASF, which created Apache CloudStack. That's why we're all here. But trying to commercialize with a distribution and have a product is got to have a differentiator. I mean, that's fine. That's a legitimate model. So you harden it, you improve features, you lay a tooling on the top. But what Citrix were basically doing was selling Apache CloudStack and charging people to support it, and that just didn't work. And almost, I think, unique to CloudStack is this heavily user-driven community. Like, everybody here is a user. We haven't got lots of, vendors who are developing CloudStack, and I think the fact that everybody here takes pure open source Apache CloudStack is a really healthy thing. I mean, if somebody wanted to come and do a distribution, it would be nice to have a look at, but I don't think we'd benefit from it.
I have the same opinion. I think what you already get is enterprise support via Shape Blue. And sorry, we need to mention you. You're doing a great job. And I like the approach of having open source and, if you want, enterprise support additionally. And I think this works. And it worked in the past. or cloud platform, as Citrix called CloudStack enterprise product, didn't work. They sold it. Maybe it's a Citrix problem and not the cloud platform problem, but the past told us it didn't work and the other approach worked.
The only reason I can think of doing a commercial release is that customers go to sometimes to get enterprise support because they also want to have something like a guarantee that a bug which they encounter from certain severity can be fixed within X amount of time. This can also be done, of course, with an open source version, but then that customer will get a manually patched version for you where the bug is addressed. And sometimes then the bug needs to go to a pull request, and the pull request can maybe take a long time because the community says, well, it's not really fitting our use case, let's work on this a bit more, and the customer says, no, but I want this fixed. So that's the use case I've seen where people use commercial distributions because they can get a certain guarantee that things have been tested, and also they get bug fixes within a certain time frame. But would CloudStack benefit? I don't think that is really beneficial for the project itself.
You know, I think if somebody wanted to create a tangential product based on CloudStack, right, with a slightly different use case in mind or what have you, great, go for it. I mean, it's Apache 2 license, you can, but yeah, I think the common use case we all have here, there's no benefit from having a vendor distribution.
So you agree that there is no benefit, but on the other hand, as a project, we integrate with a lot of commercial vendors, like storage vendors, like, for example, Terraform, Minio, Limbit, and Storepool, some of our sponsors. So do you think that we're lacking some integration, and what is the benefit for the project, according to you, to integrate with external vendors, which are actually commercial?
I don't think it's lacking something. I think it's a great benefit that it's so many, well, that quite a list of vendors are ready to contribute, are ready to integrate their products into CloudStack, and are actually able to contribute. That's a good sign that everyone is able to contribute, and supporting their storage of their product XY. It's a great thing that it's possible and that they actually do it, and that's enriching visibility as well again.
Yeah, and I think it shows that CloudStack is interesting for partners or for vendors. There is business value because no vendor will invest into an open source project if there is no business value for him. And the good thing is CloudStack works without these storage vendors or any other vendor, but it works sometimes even better, and you have the option to do it.
I think, you know, the fact Storepool, Limbit, and people are here sponsoring shows, there's definitely value, there's definitely a route to market for vendors through CloudStack, and not just storage as well, as a whole range of other things that integrate. I think in terms of ease of that from their side, you know, it's no coincidence you've got two very open source focused storage companies here, right? We haven't got a lot of proprietary focused storage companies here because they probably don't get the open source bit. So, you know, when a vendor comes along and says, I want to integrate with CloudStack, these guys are getting the idea of joining a mailing list and getting a developer to start to have a look at it. With certain other vendors, they're expecting to have a meeting in a room in a suit, and that's the way where you start a project like that. So, you know, there's maybe, as a project, more we could do to attract vendors and their interests. But I think we're in a pretty healthy place at the moment.
And are there any emerging technologies with which you think we should integrate, or are we missing some integration points?
I think there was a plan for a meeting with the Ceph community as well, and I think there could be benefits of enriching that.
I think better Kubernetes integration, but it's already working on. This is a good option for the future.
Yeah, I'm all pro Ceph. So everybody, February 8th, Amsterdam, and there's going to be a Ceph and CloudStack Day. But yeah, I think, but getting back to one of the earlier questions, does CloudStack need additional features? I think that, I'm never going to say it's finished, but it reached a certain maturity where it's reliable, and maybe adding features is something which we as humans always think about. It needs to evolve, we need getting more features, but maybe it got to a point where it kind of needs to stay as what it is so it can keep supporting infrastructure for the coming 10, 15, 20 years. As is right now, with of course bug fixes, enhancement, but major overhauls, major features, I'm not really aware of things which we're missing.
I want to finish with one question from the questions which we got submitted on the survey before the event, and we have quite a lot of questions on the online stream. I suppose some questions also from the room. So let's discuss a bit about the community. According to you, how important is the community, and are we having a healthy and growing community, or we should still work towards that direction?
We should always work into that direction. It's really important for an open source project to have a great community. As far as I can tell, it's one of the best communities we worked ever with from the user perspective. But you need a good community for such a huge project.
I want to ask a question to the audience. Who here is under 40? Under 35? So I'll just keep going. Under 30. Under 25. Okay, I've got one hand left. Oh, a few hands left. So I think this is one of the things what we're seeing with communities is that I think we need more younger people in here in the community as well. So that means in 18, 19, 20, 21, the ones working with software, starting to build infrastructure, those should get familiar with CloudStack and should get enthusiastic about building infrastructure. And no offense, but we're getting old here in this room. So I think we need younger people in the community.
I strongly disagree. I think as well, we heard that before. There's no trolling on the user list. There's no. It's a lovely community which is quite stable in terms of participants, and that's a benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Age discrimination, we have a law in that for the UK. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant community, and it has been for a long time. And I think if you look at root cause of that, again, it's user-driven, right? We haven't got lots of politics at play in the CloudStack community. And I think the other thing for everybody here to think about is the community isn't just the guys on the dev list, right? I'm not a developer, I used to be, but I haven't for a long, long time. This is sort of part of that community, and the talks we do, and the stuff that Rohit was talking about this morning in terms of getting the message out. That's all part of it. But yeah, I think it's essential to CloudStack. I think it is the lifeblood of CloudStack, and long may it continue.
Okay, I'm starting with the online questions and going back to the topic about migration to KVM. Rodrigo Feria is asking, we are having difficulties in the process of migration machines from Xen to KVM, which is a bit complex. What would you advise?
I think there's a talk on that this afternoon, is there?
We have the same thing in front of us. We need to do some migrations from Xen to KVM. We're looking into it right now. We do not have a solution right now. And maybe the best solution is to spin up new VMs and do migration of the content separately. I'm not sure about that.
Absolutely, I would agree. It's always a chance to re-evaluate your documentation, re-evaluate your deployment scripts, re-evaluate everything you have to set up those VMs, because you don't get many chances to check all of that and to start fresh and new. Usually you try to migrate, you try to evolve further with the existing, but stopping and starting new is always a big chance as well, even though it's efforts, but it's a big chance.
I hope we managed to answer the question, but Rodrigo, if you would like to get additional clarification or just exchange some experience, in the Hubble platform we have an option in which you can chat with all of the attendees and speakers, so you can get in touch with Sven and Stefan and you can exchange some experience. Next question is, can you share your ideas that will help with the growth of CloudStack user adoption? And do you have ideas about the future of CloudStack?
So, I think if we think back to Rohit's talk this morning, and we are from a technology viewpoint, and what you were saying as well, Guido, we're in the plateau of productivity, right? We are stable, so we're not doing crazy, exciting things, right? But we do still see adoption going up. I think for a project like ours that doesn't have a big dominant vendor who's prepared to spend $100 million a year on marketing the product and what have you, that it is really down to the community to sort of get the word out, to share your story, right? In terms of doing case studies with the community, talking about the usage. But we see, you know, those download figures that Rohit shared, we see those every year at the State of the Union, and we see them going up every year. So, you know, there is no problem with CloudStack adoption. It's going the right way. Do we need to accelerate it? That's a genuine question. We're seeing our community grow. I think the way to grow a community is simply just get more users. You then get more people in your community. You can do, you know, things like Google Summer of Code and stuff and make it more accessible to younger people. But ultimately, more users means more community. And in terms of where CloudStack's going, I think, you know, there are big opportunities around orchestration for lots of different reasons, right? I talked about that VMware issue and abstraction, but power management, workload management, they're all things that people are really looking at their data centers now, particularly, you know, with CO2 emission and what have you. So there's a lot of opportunity for CloudStack to go in different directions, but I think the thing we've always had as a project, we as a community tend to steer it gently in different directions. We don't leap. We're not a vendor, right? So we don't leap from one place to another, and that's what makes it healthy. So.
Next question is anonymous, but it's on a very interesting topic about cybersecurity. So do you have any plans to improve the cybersecurity related functions inside CloudStack? And maybe we can comment a little bit on the Cyber Resilience Act and whether it will somehow affect the project.
Shall I go? It's one of my pet subjects. I think Charles talked about the CRA this morning, which is fundamentally there to ultimately make manufacturers and vendors be more serious around cybersecurity after the Log4j stuff, and the US government went, oh, we didn't know how many people were using this, and everything nearly stopped. And in its design, it's a good thing. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. CloudStack already as a community has got a well-defined security process. It's an open source community process, but it's well-defined with reporting, logging of CVEs. There's protected lists, security lists where things are discussed, and we respond very well to security problems. I think the issue with the proposed EU legislation is what they put a very big legal responsibility on. Basically, it's designed to be on manufacturers and vendors, people who are selling stuff. And they put an exception in for open source, but it wasn't broad enough. So anybody working in an open source project, I think, who basically receives a salary, more or less by definition, that is now a commercial thing. So it looks like it's just going to be a sort of blanket. It's going to pick up every open source project. It almost certainly will mean, if the legislation passes as it's proposed, it will mean there needs to be some slightly better reporting from open source projects like CloudStack. We actually have to report it to the EU central database within 24 hours, which is another concern, that if you're trying to look at a vulnerability and figure it out, you don't want to disclose it to anybody, you've got to do that. I think that law will change, and I think they will be more forgiving to open source projects. It's my gut feeling.
I can say not much about the legal stuff, but in my opinion, open source is as safe as you can get for software, because everybody has a chance to see some loops or some open doors or back doors and stuff like that. sure, we had in the past problems with open source, but to see that, to be aware of this problem, I see it more positive, because I'm not sure how vendor-locked software behaved in the last, or how many incidents really happened in the past, because we are not aware of it. And sure, we has SSH got their problems in the past. Log4j you mentioned before was a huge problem, but we need to learn from that experience to perform better in the future. But we have the chance to perform better instead of using locked software. You don't know how many backdoors are in.
No, I don't.
We're getting more and more questions from the online stream. Unfortunately, I don't think we will have time to answer all of them, because I also want to give the word to the people inside the room. But there is one which is quite interesting. So on each market and with every solution, being an open source project or not, there is always competitors and competition. So a guy inside the stream is asking, what do you think is the main reason people are choosing Openstack versus CloudStack?
I don't know.
Marketing, that's the fact. There's big companies, so it goes out. So you go to Red Hat, you see Openstack, it's thrown in your face, so that everybody says, it's probably good. And then I think nobody actually does a benchmark between the two projects. They think, oh, Openstack, so I'll go for Openstack because I heard about it. And it's not a bad project, it's fine, it works. If it works for you, great. But I think that nobody really does their due diligence before they start with something. It just starts from somewhere with maybe Openstack or CloudStack.
I agree to that. It's the name is way more present out there, and as I mentioned in my talk earlier, during an evaluation, you definitely stumble across OpenStack. So you have a look at it, and if you don't stumble across CloudStack as an alternative, for example, then yeah, you try your best to get it running, and once it is there, it's hard to get off again. And you don't have to. It's a great product still.
And I think, people aren't choosing OpenStack; they're choosing whichever of the distributions that the salespeople are speaking to them at the time, and they're from large, significant organisations, and those people might have other investments in Red Hat technology or whatever. So there's often a load of reasons. But I think, as Guido says, if we tend to find if people have done a like-for-like POC on the bench, CloudStack wins. Okay, it's whether we can get it on the bench in the first place.
Any questions from the audience here? Introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Ali Reza, and I have working on CloudStack for 5 years, providing some public cloud services on VMware. I have a question about, do you have any plan for managing CloudStack with Kubernetes? As far as I know, we don't have any Docker images for CloudStack, and sometimes when I want to deploy a proof of concept and I want to be very fast about it, I don't find it. So I need to install it on the VM. And if we want to go a step further, we can manage CloudStack with Kubernetes like something we do in KubeVirt. And we can define virtual machines, zones, networks, storage, everything inside Kubernetes as manifest. So you can store it in Git repositories, and you can deploy your testing environments, your production environments easily, and you can convert your configuration between these environments. So it would help us to also backup or migrate our systems and reconcile it easily. Maybe it would be because of the architecture of the CloudStack, it would be easily integrated in such solution, and can open a new market for itself, rather than if you want to compare it, for example, with Openstack that has different APIs, endpoint, and it is very difficult for it to open such a market for itself. And yeah, I think KubeVirt is the only system that is available that can manage hypervisors in Kubernetes. Maybe CloudStack can be the next. Thank you.
I know there are organisations who are doing exactly what you're talking about, but from a project perspective, you're right. It's not something that the community has invested a lot of time in. That might be something that's worth having a chat about with some of the developers over a cup of coffee. Have a look. I think the guys at AT&T in the US are doing some really interesting stuff in this space, which hasn't seen its way back into the project yet. They're doing a talk, I think, this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon. But yeah, I think different people, and like so many things in an open source community, it will just be a question of lots of people are doing different things, and then they need to coalesce in the mailing list and say, okay, let's work on this centrally.
Anybody wants to add something? Quick question from the online stream, because it seems that many people are interested. Are there any plans in the community to be offered more trainings and online courses and some certifications about CloudStack?
I'm the one to mention ShapeBlue again, because we did the courses you offered for our employees and our technicians, which helped us a lot to get the knowledge in the company to work or to administer CloudStack. I'm not aware if any other company is providing courses.
I think there are a few dotted around the world doing the more sort of traditional training we do, but there's a lot of online content out there. I think it's just a question of getting time to organise that into a logical set of training. And from a certification viewpoint, it's interesting because we did have a certification which was provided by the Linux Foundation, and then it sort of withered and died because the people who actually authored it weren't interested in the product. I would love to see us getting a certification thing back, and that's maybe something I can take as a takeaway from this. Think about, how as a community we can do that.
I just want to take a minute to add to what Jao said, that many community members are developing a lot of content around CloudStack. So if you're checking the blogs of the community members, and if you're checking the YouTube channels and even the official YouTube channel of the project, with all of the sessions which are uploaded from events like this, you can definitely find a lot of starting points to train yourself and to understand better the features and capabilities. Any other questions from the room? Just pick up your hand if you have. No? Okay. So yeah, round of applauses for our panelists then.